I have had a lot of time to feel and deal with an emotion called grief. And I'm here to tell you it doesn't go away. Grief isn't something you can heal and expect to go back to the way you were before you encountered grief. Grief in itself is it's a form of consciousness. It's alive. It doesn't just belong to you. Some of us tap into grief that is saturated in the collective consciousness. It's in every plant and every tree. It's everywhere you look. It's almost as if it's a part of life itself. The entire thread and tapestry, and one of those threads, one of those strands in the thread is grief. And the most basic way to describe grief is that it's the love you have for someone that you can't give to them physically. So when you're attempting to heal yourself of grief or to rid yourself of it, what you're really doing is lessening or attempting to lessen or outright remove the love you feel for someone, which is impossible. So when grief shows up, you don't just think you're broken or that you're doomed. Instead, it's more of a call to expand. It's your soul calling you to grow and increase the capacity to love that you possess. So instead of being crippled by it, instead, every time you feel it, you do something else that increases the things you love. So if you love a sweater, get another sweater. Example being, if you're in a state of grief and you are attempting to express love to a deceased loved one or friends you missed 30 years ago, or whatever your trigger or your nerve ending or the gravity well that you trip into, whatever it is, you love something and you can't express it. So do something to add to it. Create something you will love. Create something someone else will love. Bring more beauty into your environment. So if you love paintings, if you love statues or tarot cards, video games, pets, get more things to love. But you are the one that's supposed to love yourself. Like, you and yourself are supposed to be one of those things, first and foremost. Because you have to have compassion for yourself all the time, but especially when you're encountering grief itself. Because you can't overwhelm it, you can't overcome it, you can't fight through it. It's a part of you. Just like anger is a part of you, just like happiness and serenity and peace and lustfulness and, fury and all of these things are a part of you. So is grief. And you're actually really lucky and blessed to have experienced it. If you look at it in the way of a scientist, you've encountered a power source that is unimaginably powerful and painful. And it doesn't delve into negative or positive frequencies. It exists in both. You can be grief stricken and be at the top of a mountain, zenned out and touching nirvana and being at the gates of heaven, or even being in heaven. And then there's this feeling, this reminder of things you remember, but you don't remember it the way it was, or you remember that you've forgotten something and you can't remember what it is you forgot, but you know you loved it. A love of your life, a fairy tale that never finished, a loved one, family member, a pet that's gone. All these things that you can't physically express your love to anymore. It's not there to handicap you. It's there to show you, do something different, take a different path. Now you have, if it's a game, you acquired this new power and now you're supposed to move forward with this new power. So the game changes. Your reality changes, you change. And then there's grief for that you're not the person you were anymore. That the more innocent version of you has now been turned harder and more strong in a way. And that strength asks of you to expand your capacity to love, but first with yourself. Because you can either use grief as a beautiful blessing, or you can allow it to be a curse and end you where you are, which isn't worth it. You went through all of that life experience with that person, place, or thing, and multiple places and people and things, and you loved them dearly. Everything you knew as home and normal and family and friend, the way you were touched, the way food tasted, the way you slept easier, the way your body felt, all these things change. They change when people pass, and they change when people come. So if you're single and you're home alone and you have one pet, or you don't even have a pet, you have a single life and you're by yourself and you're just doing your thing. When you get a pet, that life of you by yourself is forever changed. There is grief in that you don't acknowledge. Do you realize this? A piece of you dies every single choice you make. And a little check mark, a little +1 counter of grief goes into your grief meter, which is infinite. The only limit to how much grief you can feel is how much love you feel. Because you can sit there and stare at a tiny little kitten coming out of its, carrier into your home. And you know that for, God willing, for the next 20 years, 30 years, however many years that animal is alive, you will be completely different. And then after it's gone, you will be even more different. So not only are you grieving for the changes and the loss and the letting go, but also for the growth and the evolution and the companionship, and then the loss of those things as well. Every day that you had dinner by yourself and you enjoyed watching TV and doing all these things on your own, getting to know yourself, all that's changed. Because now you're not yourself anymore, you're yourself +1. And you can use that as a shield to hide behind, or as your light to guide you. You can be in one relationship and it can be the best, and then it changes, and then it's the worst, and then it's, gone. And that grief from all of it is still in you. So when you go to another relationship, the way you love someone in that next relationship is tainted. Because you carry the grief from the past to the present, which affects the future. And then when you look back at the trail of events, you've been carrying a burden that you didn't realize you were supposed to unwrap, because it has prizes in there for you. Grief is a gift. It teaches you how to be grateful. It teaches you how to know foresight and hindsight in present moment. Once you know grief, you know that every single choice you make will result in another cause and effect very, very acutely. You start to cherish and appreciate everyone in your life, every moment in your life, from curtains swaying to the way leaves on a tree look, because tomorrow they won't look the same. 10 seconds from now, they won't be the same. There is a quote about you never stand in the same river twice. You never stare at the same lake twice. You are never in the same place twice. Everything changes. That's what makes love so important. When you find people you love, even when you have one moment of feeling completely at home with them, there's grief in that, in the joy of it, in the acceptance and the familiarity of it, but also knowing that so many other times and people you've shared that experience with. And most of them aren't around anymore. So you better appreciate the one you have. There's a very thin line between regret and grief. And may you never know regret. It teaches you how to really know yourself, how to analyze situations, while grief keeps the analyticalness to a limit. And then it leads into the heart, to where you feel and follow your heart. It's kind of like the negative spectrum evolution compared to the positive spectrum. So you delve deep into the emotion and you feel it fully. And at the bottom of that deep, infinite well, where you think is the bottom of it, you find treasures. It's an art. It's an art and a talent to survive heartache, and especially to love again afterwards. Because the way you look afterwards, after you've encountered grief and loss, and then love again, and someone looks at you in your eyes after you've lost something dear to you, your eyes change. Your face changes. There's a certain wisdom. It's not age. It's not maturity. It's not really intelligence. It's like an aura, an essence, a ephemeral, ethereal type of mist around you. I don't know if other people can see it, but I see it. Almost as if at any moment this person will break down and cry. It's like a fragile, pristine gentleness. Like, do I touch this person? but they look like they need to be touched. They look happy and fine, but they look like they need to be held at the same time. And that if you hold them, they will never let you go. And that they love you enough and more than enough to have you be as free as you ever wanted to be. Because once you encounter this grief, you can't control anybody and say, no, I only allow this in a relationship or that. You allow everything to experience that person in their entire freedom because you love them, which changes the foundation of relationships and marriages and everything. When you completely allow someone to do everything that they want to do while you still love them. Because anything else would result in grief and fighting and regret and arguments. So what's more important? Seeing your loved ones smile and happy and enjoying their life, this beautiful mortal life we're living, or to stay bound in your rules, in your histories, in your wars, and your battles, and your arguments, and your he said, she said, and your but this happened and that happened, and then these things were done, and who cares? I love you more than any of that. So when you encounter grief and you're experiencing regret, thank yourself for being so strong that you chose to experience something so painful. And know that it makes you better and stronger. If you think about it in a movie term, it's like think about Galadriel in Lord of the Rings. Think about Amalthea in The Last Unicorn. Or Arwen from Lord of the Rings. Or you can think about Queen Elizabeth, the movie from, I think it was the Golden Age, or the first one. These movies with these powerful, intense beings that are so full of devotion and love and leadership and wisdom and grace, and they know just how to do something, and they love whom they love, and it's almost like they've been alive for eternity. It's a form of grace, and that's what grief leads into. It turns the child, the maiden, into the mother. It turns the mother into the crone, turns the son into the father, and the father into the sage. And then the sage and the crone become the god and the goddess. Not just by meditating and zenning and chanting and mantras and parties by the beach and just, communities, and not just by those things, but by the energy and consciousness of grief and love, acceptance, regret, hindsight, foresight, wisdom, compassion, the strength it takes to feel what someone else is feeling and to withstand the storm with them, the sympathy and the empathy for yourself, the strength to continuously feel even though everything tells you to not feel, even when it's anger that you want to feel it, release it. Not all light needs to be bright. And shadows don't have to be afraid of the light, and the light doesn't have to constantly be battling the shadows. What if the shadows are actually cradling the light so that the light doesn't go out? And the more the shadow releases, the more the light expands. It's kind of like the light and the shadow are each other's divine mates. You ever notice how everything you look at is lined with shadow, as if the shadow is what gives light form? You can't really love and appreciate loving someone until you know what it's like to lose them, to be without them, to have all of that love that you took for granted and you just spewed away and you just squirted it all away. To have all that love be inside you, where it can't hide behind anger, where it can't hide behind masks and ego. It's just pure energy inside you. Then you get to know it. And then you realize what exactly love is and what giving and receiving means and how to actually be in a relationship that lasts for the rest of your life. Which then also brings grief with it. Because then you have to make certain that you're okay without being with anyone else for the rest of your life. You have to feel that grief too. Which means you have to put all of that love into having your partner be the best person that they can be, including yourself. Where every kiss you give them will be the first kiss. It'll be better than the first kiss. So that if you had 1,000 first kisses if you were single for the rest of your life, the next 1,000 kisses with the love of your life will be better than any. Because you make each and every one different, unique and special. And it's its own unique moment. You cherish every moment you make love with them and eat dinner and watch TV and go for a walk, as if your eyes are cameras and you're taking pictures of everything. And then take pictures of everything. Don't be a society that takes the one thing that keeps you human for granted. Love may be the strongest force in existence, but it's sisters with grief. Love intensely, even if it means being covered in tears and broken from the inside out. Love even more. You won't regret loving more. You will regret loving less. Because later when you look back at yourself and you see how horribly you treated people, how much you denied them human decency, how much you were angry and vengeful, and how much you said terrible things, and how you acted less intelligent than you are. When you start realizing how much you behaved like a Neanderthal, how vindictive or how petty and how warlike, and how many manipulations people have made, and lies, and when you see all of the scum that the human is capable of, especially with a human that has a divine source in it, it can be tragic. Love more deeply. Choose to love more, because when you look back on all of this, you're gonna hate yourself. You're gonna hate how much you knew better, but you chose petty. Don't wait until people are dead. Don't wait until people are gone or when people stop loving you. Don't wait until people start thinking of you as a terrible person before you start acting like a good person. Don't wait until people think you too stupid to do anything before you show them you're really intelligent. Do not wait until you start feeling old and ugly before you start dressing beautiful and being confident. Don't wait to be the love of your own life or to be the love of someone else's life for any possible excuse or reason. Do it now. You have no idea how much people can feel and the lengths people go to avoid feeling. Every second you waste in silence, every moment you waste with a cold heart, ensures that someone else in the world suffers along with you. Because any action you can take to better your situation or someone else's situation means there is less suffering. And when you take neutrality and inaction and apathy, you become part of the darkness. And not the darkness that holds up the light, but the darkness that hides the light completely. You want the balance, tipped in the favor of light. I love you.